Hello, writers and crafters. I'm Valerie Isan.
And I'm Erick Mertz.
And this is episode 107 of the podcast, and it's March 25th, 2023, as we record this. Today, we're talking with author Jennie Komp about a really awesome anthology project that she started and ran with, and we'll have lots of questions for her in the interview portion of the show. We don't have any new patrons this week, but thank you to our existing patrons for believing in us and in the podcast. For as low as $1 a month, you can get a postcard from me, a shout out on the podcast, and we can make announcements for you on the air. Other tiers, the benefits increase, free books, accountability Zoom calls, scene analysis, mastermind calls, and even free WriterCraft retreat tickets. Become a patron of the arts at patreon.com/Valerie Isan. IHSAN, and patreon.com/Strange Air Stories for paranormal mysteries. All right. Any announcements? I don't have anything new.
Nothing new from me.
Yeah, we are recording a little bit earlier this week. So not much has happened since last time I talked with you. So my author
just
updates
a couple of days. I feel like we were just here.
Sparse. I did do Sasha Black and Rachel Herron had done a little book clubby thing once for one of their podcasts, and they had recommended the book Profit First. And I read that and devoured it and have reread it and have started implementing it in my author business. And so yesterday I spent all day long setting things up and doing financial stuff and looking through all of last year's expenses and line by line figuring out which expense I can ditch. And it was, kind of painful, but also exciting in a weird sort of.
I was going to say, you
way.
love that stuff. So you're saying it's painful, but you've got this little smile on your face. I love it.
Well, it's embarrassing.
Why? It sounds awesome.
I don't like numbers. And I also realized the majority of the sobering thing was that when I went in to reduce my expenses by canceling stuff, there was only 2 that I could basically maybe cancel. And that only would save me $42 a month or something, which I'm not going to sneeze at, I'll take it. But
it's something, right?
But I think that this is the embarrassing part. I think the main thing that I need to stop buying books. I think that was my biggest expense last year.
So where's the censor sound, the beeping out of the profanity that comes from you right there? Jennie, what do you think about that?
I am going to utilize my library.
I'm a writer. I'm going to stop buying books, right?
Yeah, I don't think that's actually logical, realistic, but I have heavily not censored myself, but what's the word? I've given myself a
restrained,
very strict rules about when I can buy a book, and we'll see if I can, and then I'll just utilize my public library, which I should be doing more of anyway. And plus I have 3 bookcases of books that I haven't read yet. So I do not have a dearth of books to read.
But the ones in the case, they're there for you when you need them. You knew when you picked them up at some point, that was going to be an important read for you. It's okay to have those. And that's something I'm adjusting to as well. But the idea of an author not buying books, it's I'm a race car driver, but no new tires this year.
No new tires on my race car.
The reason why we read books is because, we love them, but also for our job, we have to study story structure and all that. But I can get that through the library. I can get that through the hundreds of books that I have in my home right now that I haven't read yet. So I think I'm going to be okay. And I'll just be really strict with when I can buy books. And yeah. Because
bookstores rely on you and your fellow authors rely on you to splurge.
All right. So are you casting shame on my decision?
No, not shame, just a little shade.
All right.
I had the
speaking of
same
books-
embarrassing.
No, what's your author update?
I had the same embarrassing thing when I went through my expenses. My wife and I both realized we were paying for like the same subscription service and out of separate accounts. And we were, because we do the thing where we want to watch the series, but we don't want to subscribe. So we'll do the 7-day trial. And then it's like years go by. Like, oh, we have AMC still? Great. But yeah, we realized we were both paying for the same thing. So
we learned to set up timers, alarms.
Oh yeah.
But you got to tell yourself to cancel it 1 to 2 days before it's due, so you can forget for a day and still frantically do it.
There you go. Yeah.
That's one of those warnings where you're like, cancel AMC. What? Oh, right. The Outlander. I had to watch that.
That's really good.
Oh yeah, it's worth it. It was.
Oh yeah.
The 2 years of us individually paying for it, the $150 we paid to watch that season of Outlander, choice. It was perfect. But AMC needed my money, so
yeah.
What about you? Any author updates?
I do that. Not really. I mean, well, actually, I guess so. Yeah, I had kind of like a little mini breakthrough on a couple of short stories that I was noodling on. Things that I was like, concepts that I had started and then I didn't know where they were going. And I kind of had a couple of breakthroughs. I took my mom to this is crazy, right? So now I talk about crazy author moments. Like it was my mom's 72nd birthday on Monday. Happy birthday, Mom. And she said, Erick, just take me to the casino. So I said, okay. So we got in the car and we drove to the casino in Washington, and she went about playing slots and I sat around the sports book and watched and was betting on sports games. And I sat there with, on one hand, I had like what I was going to bet on. The other hand, I had my little author notebook. I got a lot of great ideas just sitting there. Like watching the whole casino world is so different. It was like,
oh yeah,
I was such a tourist. It was great. Like here's the betting sheet from that other day, right? It's like covered in my notes, like, oh, this is how this story is going to end. And oh, this is this character's motivation. And so I unlocked a lot of stuff, and I will actually now finish those short stories and submit them to anthologies.
Awesome.
See that segue right there? See how I segued right there?
All right. Well, let's go back to, let's do our reading clip. What are you reading, Erick?
Oh, I'm still reading Fairy Tale. I'm not done with Fairy Tale yet.
Okay. What about you? What are you reading?
Actually, I was just pulling up. Because I have a commute, I mostly am audiobooks right now, and I'll shape between fiction and nonfiction. And I am on the Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches.
Ooh, neat. Let me type that down. The Very
Secret Society.
Very Secret Society
of Irregular Witches.
Irregular Witches?
Yeah.
Irregular Witches.
And I will butcher the author's name if I attempt to.
I'll look it up and find the author's name later.
Sangu Mandana?
I think so.
Is that the one?
Yeah. Yeah,
I may have butchered
a very found family kind of. So far, it's fun and quirky and light, and it's got some delightful takes on magic. So it's a wonderful pass the time and refresher after some of the heavy epic fantasy stuff I just finished. So
cool. Well, I just finished what did I just finish? Oh, the Vampire Slayer one, the Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. I just finished that one the other day.
Oh, cool. How
cool.
And then I am now reading Pilgrimage by J.F. Penn. I funded her Kickstarter, so I got her book from the Kickstarter. I think you can buy it now on her website. I don't think it's called Pilgrimage. It's her memoir of walking these 3 different St. Cuthbert's Way and the Camino and another one too. I can't remember. These 3 different walks that she did. And so, yeah, it's her first memoir. So it's kind of a how-to memoir also, like there's practical tips about walking solo or, doing pilgrimage walks, but also like her personal experience of doing it too. So I dig those kind of like hybrid memoirs. I like those.
That's kind of cool.
My number one input likes like the detail stuff and the tips and tricks, but then I like the connection and so number 2 empathy and number 6 connectedness, I think. So I really like that too in memoir. Maybe that's why I like memoirs so much. I don't know. All right, well, we should probably re-up that segue. Erick, can you say it again?
Oh, I may be submitting stories to Anthologies.
Da, da, da.
Oh, look at how we did that. That was magical. The handoff.
So I'm going to read the bio for Jennie Komp. She has been taking apart stories to explain why we love or hate them for over 30 years. A behavioral science major that found her voice after a decade of live theater productions, Jennie lives for stories that are as entertaining and consumable as they are transformative. Her developmental editing focuses on the connection between a book and its potential audience, emphasizing the tangible elements that bring a story into a reader's everyday life and reveal our relationship with the extraordinary. A distinctive realist, Jennie's dark sense of humor is balanced by a mantra that is the standard for everything she does. The Disney is in the details. Welcome, Jennie Komp.
Welcome.
And Erick, thank you. I'm honored to be here. You guys are my first podcast. I'm kind of thrilled.
Wow, really?
Oh wow.
You've never been on a podcast before? Yay.
Yeah, I've listened to several, but I have not been on one yet. Friend of mine, we've entertained the idea of doing one, but we've got too many other things going, mostly books. So
right.
Well, we met you in I met you. I don't know where Erick met you, but I met you at a Willamette Writers conference. Probably, I don't know, 7 years ago or more than that.
It'd be about
maybe
6-7 years ago. I started coming to the Willamette Writers conferences when we moved back from Dallas, which is about 7 years ago. So, yeah, and I've been to almost everyone since.
Wait, did Tex Thompson introduce you to
Yes.
me?
Oh boy.
Wow. I had forgotten about that connection. Tex.
I know I haven't seen Tex in ages or heard from her, and I know she's got her own stuff going on, but my God, that woman's a force of nature.
We should have her on the podcast.
That would be so much fun. Yay.
We should get all 4 of us to do the podcast. That would be super fun.
I'm in. Get Tex, I'm in. She gets a delight. She does this remember that when combining expressions I'm so jealous of.
I remember when I was the co-chair of the Willamette Writers Conference, which must have been 2019. That maybe I think 18. You were doing maybe 18. You were doing the social media thing. You were doing something like with the media, and you constantly found me at my most stressful moments, and I constantly laughed. Like, I don't know, I don't remember anything that you said that made me laugh. I just remember stress, run into Jennie. Okay, I can deal.
Yep. That dark sense of humor.
It was perfect. It was. I think you picked up on the fact that like I was like a fish out of water in that role for in certain moments, and you rescued me. So for that, I appreciate you.
Oh my gosh, you're most welcome. I wonder if that was the year I was doing all the interviews. That was
I think it was because you took an inappropriate interview video of me after I'd had too many drinks at the bar. Yeah,
which doesn't happen. I never saw that video,
so thank you.
They still exist, by the way. They're up on Facebook. I looked them up, I don't know, ages ago. I was ironically interviewing to possibly be a co-host on a podcast for like the CityCast or something like that. And they're like, what experience do you have? I'm like, 3 solid days of interviewing people. Check it out. And so I'd like go and look up all of the links and turn it over to them. So I was like, oh my gosh, that was wild to watch those again. We are all so bleary-eyed and staggering around by the end and just punch drunk tired.
Yeah, conferences do that for a lot of people.
Oh,
yeah. The staggering around is not necessarily from the bar, it's just from being there. Yeah. Right. I mean, that's conference life.
That's sober-ish at 11 o'clock in the morning.
and
Yeah.
being introverted
on-
and still trying to like,
trying to people. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
That would be a fun topic. Before we get into the main, let's consider that for a topic, like peopling when you're not a people person, like when you're not an extrovert,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
conference. Wow.
That's
Wow. Everybody thinks like I'm an extrovert. I'm like the most introverted person, but like I power through by just like overdoing it, like I overdo it. Oh man,
Yeah.
Sunday's the hardest day of conference weekend.
right. Yeah, I'm incredibly introverted, but I have a business persona that I will don.
the
And
Jennie avatar.
yeah, basically, this incredibly accomplished professional businesswoman that I'm hoping to be someday. I don't know. And thank you. I put her on, and I don't know, try to exude the confidence that I wish I had.
There you go.
I mean,
I used to always say fake it till you make it,
works.
but somebody told me another one that I really like instead, and I actually printed it out. It's on my wall. It says believe until you become, which I like better than fake it till you make it,
I like dress for the job you want. And I think that's like not just the clothes, but just the persona. If you want people to see you as, then wear those clothes until they fit.
Yeah.
There you go.
The other term,
we're so full of wisdom.
For some reason, as adults, we seem to forget that practice is still okay.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
So we have faking it, or it's not. It's just we're practicing, and I hate this idea of adults of like, well, you better get it right the first time out the gate, whether or not you've ever done it before in your entire life, or you suck at it. No, man, things take practice.
Right. Like working on and creating an anthology. Segue.
Yes.
See how I did that?
So many.
Talk about this.
Oh my gosh.
So anthologies, tell us about them. What made you decide
tell us
to do one to begin with?
So hilariously, I thought I hated anthologies. And it's really embarrassing. I actually wasn't entirely sure what they were. I had not heard this word anthology. It was not like clicking. I'm neurodivergent, so there's some things that just don't quite align all the time in my brain. And even though I grew up reading and adoring short story collections, Chicken Soup for the Soul, those sort of things. There's a bunch of life after death story collections. Those were also big. That I did not. No one ever called those anthologies, ever. And so I did not make the connection between those and the anthologies that come out today. So that was mildly embarrassing. But no, it's honestly, it came from, even the motivation to do it all was because I've been running a reading critique group for about the past 5 years. We meet once a week, Wednesday nights, over Zoom like this, so it's super easy. Most people come with wine or a drink of some kind and enjoy, and we it's this great format. You read your writing aloud for 10 minutes, and then you get 10 minutes of live feedback from the other authors. This is what I heard, this is what I experienced, this is the questions that came up for me. I'm not sure if you want me to be having those questions at this time, that sort of thing. And that way we can make sure that the story we have in our head hit the page. Because always as authors, we know too much. We know our stories too well. And so we've been working, the long form, all the big books and big manuscripts, and those can take so much time to do. I mean, bravo to the prolific writers who can just crank it out. That's not me. That's not anybody in our group so far. So big, long process, and that can get really discouraging. And I was trying to come up with what's something we can do to help people get published, at least in a small way, sooner. What kind of group projecty, and we were coming up on the end of 2020. If y'all remember how that year went, it's kind of like we're all a little bit bonded at that point because so much time at home and most of our socializing being online like this. that there was a definite desire from everyone to do a little something more. And since I lead the group, I consulted with, you guys know John Dover. He's been incredibly instrumental. And we talked through a bunch of ideas and tabled a few of them. The one that stood out was the phone. As a result of, there was an article, and I think it just through the Facebook feed even, there was an article about a gentleman in Olympia, Washington, who'd put up this phone in the middle of nowhere, just out in the forest, connected to nothing. And he had done that because his kid's best friend had just died of COVID. And because he had read about a gentleman in Japan who had several years prior, he just lost his brother. But he wasn't done saying goodbye. It was too soon. He wanted to talk to him more. So he set up a phone booth in his backyard, put a phone in it, connected to nothing. It's gorgeous. There's really pretty pictures online and stuff. And he, whenever he needed to, go out and talk to his brother on the phone, connected to nothing. And then the tsunami hit Japan, and word of his phone got out. And people waited in lines for weeks around the corners to talk on the phone, connected to nothing, to family members who had just been snatched away, just gone in an instant, and to help with that, some of that resolution. Now, the one in the Olympia forest up in Washington, originally it was, I think it was like after 4 or 5 months, it was removed because it was just, at that point, it was considered junk. But the stories and the effect that it had on those who found out about it somehow got back to the park services, and they've now made it a permanent installation there. And I'm starting to read stories of people having put up similar phones all over places in the world. And honestly, for as therapeutic as this, I've been to the one in Olympia, Washington, and used it. And it feels kind of crazy to do. And at the same time, you're like, I need this in my backyard. Because when there's somebody from your life that is gone, there's just no amount of time with them is enough that goes on. And grief is very much love with no place to go. And that's that's a way of giving it a place to go. So I presented the idea to the group, and they were absolutely like, yes, this is cool. Let's go for it. Ironically, I challenged all of them also. It's mostly supposed to be a writing exercise. We did not expect everyone to be so thrilled with our results. So I asked a lot of them to write outside their normal genres. So I had sci-fi writers writing horror. Fantasy writers writing sci-fi. I don't typically write fantasy, and I did fantasy myself. I even did one in second person. So it was partially a writer exercise. The other thing we did is I actually and I think it's just because I came from the world of Chicken Soup for the Soul, and stuff like that, where it's very almost tunnel vision themed, if you will. Like, it's very, very specific. You pick up Chicken Soup for the Soul, you're gonna feel better after you read a story. Might even tug heartstrings, stuff like that. But I'd seen the thing that had turned me off to other short story collections or anthologies was they were all like, it just seemed to be just genre based. And I'm like, nah, just horror or just sci-fi is too generic for me. I want some thread that goes through all of them. And so we decided, I made the command decision as the person with power going to her head, that the phone itself would be a character that always behaved the same way no matter what story it showed up in. And then, as much for variety and excitement, all of those things, I told everyone, write in whatever genre you want, as long as the phone always behaves a certain way. We made some rules for it and stuff like that. Like, we changed the numbers on the dial to letters. So you dial a name in, things like that. As long as it always behaves the same, you can do whatever you want, anything else in your story. And the results, it feels special. Like I've worked with a lot of books and a lot of authors, and there's been a lot of stories that are cool and fun, and that's a great time. But almost none of them have that, like, this is special. This gets to the heart of something that you always hope to run across as an author, but you're not guaranteed to, you know? And maybe it is that connection that it has with people of, because of all of the different scenarios and that empathy that it brings up, and because it's a bunch of confessionals basically. And ironically, I was looking for an anthology idea that could get people to, in the group, to practice writing like monologues, because they weren't good at it. Or they couldn't bring it up, like, because, and I also had worked with so many other authors who they would have these epic moments, and, you know, main character, big speech, and the big speech sucks. So I'm like, we have got to practice writing the really important, you know, big-ish speeches, so that when we do that in our own writing, our own bigger books and characters, we've got some experience under our belts. We know how to really have deep impact on that, and what helps build a speech like that to be that meaningful. And so, yeah, it ends up with this really vulnerable and quirky and touching book. So
You see right there,
right?
It's interesting. I've got
I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, but
oh yeah, it's Amazon, always, you know, Barnes and Noble. We're getting it into libraries. I still need to work on Powell's. Oh, but this is entirely volunteer published too. I'll get into that later.
It's interesting that you were, you know, I'm talking about doing an anthology with a friend, and one of, like, I think we've been talking for 6 months about, you know, just the, like, where are we going to find the writers, and how are we going to organize a theme so we don't feel like we're random. And it feels like you answered all of those questions like organically, like it just, everything fell into line, you know, by even just introducing the topic.
It very much felt like that with this topic, and I've enjoyed it, working it so much, even though some of it can be super emotionally intense stories. I'm like, I want this to be volume 1. I'll make as many volumes as we can get stories for, because it's just, and I don't think there's going to be an end of them. And it's hard. You're right. It's very hard to have a topic or theme running through an anthology that's big enough that
hold all the stories.
Right.
Yeah.
It can bring in variety, but it's not so big that you're just generic genre. You know? And
yeah.
no shade to people who love the just generic genre anthologies. That's cool. I'm picky and need more focus.
You know, when I first read the concept and I thought, like, I thought this can't just be the only one. It feels like you could do dozens. It's limitless what you could get out of that. I'm sure you're going to be surprised 5 volumes in by what people bring you.
I'm excited to see the variations in the stories, and especially since we're not restricted by genre. You know, it can.
Right.
Do you find that it's difficult to market anthologies that are not a specific genre? Have you run into that yet?
I haven't. Well, this is my only experience actually marketing an anthology. Before it's just been actual book, like, just, not that it's not an actual book. It's just been, you know, singular story books.
Right.
So no, I don't have experience with a generic one.
You know, I found out about your anthology through the marketing of it, and it was the authors who contributed stories. They were also enthusiastic. They were posting them all over Facebook, and I think it must have been in the course of like a week, I saw a half a dozen people posting those stories, like posting the cover, and I don't know. I think there's just an allure. That's what's enticing about to me about an anthology, is that when people are excited about being in it, they will do some of the work, and in a good way, because they're excited. They want to
Yeah.
share that they're a part of it.
Oh yeah. I'm very impressed by and proud of all of our contributing authors, both in the group and out of it, as far as their willingness to put up those posts or reshare them and keep getting the word out. We're getting up to the required 50 reviews on Amazon here shortly.
Getting there.
Wow.
Show up in in search things.
Something changes. It's
Yeah.
true. When you cross that 50, something, it just
Mhm.
feels different. You start to see different numbers.
Yeah.
But and not to put it all in numbers, I have to put myself in check. Like, numbers equal readers, right? And if this, when you have something message based, you want to get as many people, connected to it as possible. So,
Oh yeah.
Would you
And
do another anthology?
we're already working
like,
on
in a
it.
different.
Yeah, you're already working on it.
We
You
are.
got the
We
bug.
are. I keep a list of ideas and see what sticks around, what still excites me. The
Mhm.
next one
You
we're
mean
working
ideas
on.
for themed anthologies?
Yep. The next one we're working on, and the group has finished their stories just about, and I'm gonna open up to submissions here in the next couple of months. It's called Super Dumb Powers.
Mm.
And the premise is that the powers that be get frustrated over continued COVID, blah, 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 and decide they're going to inoculate everyone. So they aerosolize the vaccine into the atmosphere, and poof, magic, huzzah. Everybody, no more COVID, no more generally those kind of transmissible diseases. Tiny side effects. Everyone gets, from that point forward, whether they're there or they're born generations there, they get technically a superpower. They're just really, really dumb. I mean, really dumb. I'm trying to, and my mind goes blank every time I try to come up with the
An example.
examples. I know there is in one of the stories.
Isn't this like the Bizarro Superman universe, where there's sort of like, there's these other superheroes, but they're not exactly super. They're just sort of like
It's a
slightly
little
above
mystery
average.
men. Yeah, it's a little mystery men.
Yeah. There you
And
go.
so and the goals with each story, and we're asking, is everyone like, you got to save someone, save a world, if you will, person, with that power, no matter how dumb it is. And there must be an acknowledged downside to it as well. So I think one of my favorite stories from our new members of our group, Carol Lee wrote, is about a family who every member of the family cannot see a specific textile. And it follows the course of the teenager when they realize they can't see cotton. And they discover this because grandma visits for Christmas. And on her way home, or getting ready, grandma packs up to leave and is comes downstairs, but it just so happens everything she's put on is cotton.
Mm.
And so as far as this kid's
So
concerned,
it's a horror story.
Anna is naked. Yes. And so it is the most absolutely hilarious what it like of the like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna go to trauma or to therapy for this person. So there's some fun, crazy, quirky things. There's always someone who goes darker too. I think there's another one that's in a future where they're just, the population's big enough that they're euthanizing people who don't have useful enough powers. Like, oh my gosh, you guys, like, this is supposed to be
something
a fun
else to
one,
worry
guys.
about today.
Come on. Yeah. And I didn't get as many fun stories for the phone either. I'm like, guys, there can be some really quirky. There's a few in there. There's one that's by Cora Uni. It's basically cannibalism. This fine dining restaurant where they're without completely ruining it. They're feeding really crappy parents
Oh.
to underprivileged people.
I mean, I see a solution here.
And usually that's their kids working at said restaurant that make it possible.
Oh,
So their kids are turning them in because they're awful.
Well, we will have a
So
link
just on
in
a-
the show notes for that book.
yeah,
Right.
absolutely. What were some of the so take us through. So you had the stories. You didn't. It sounds like you didn't exactly go through the major, like, you an announcement, and you didn't, like, you had a core group of stories you could work with. Like, how did you go about, like, how did you assemble the anthology? What was the, like, yeah, just kind of take us through, like, the process of putting it together.
Yeah. So we within the group, those who've been a member for a year or more, you automatically, like, you're at the top list front of line to have your story in there, even but you're not guaranteed, because I'm not going to just put a story in a book because attendance was cool. You still has to be a good enough story. That being said, group members also get about a year, if they want it, to workshop their story or stories, and you can do up to two flash fiction, one flash fiction and one short story, to practice both mediums. And so, I mean, anything you have a year about to work on, even if it's not your jam, you can usually get there. And so most of them submitted at least two, sometimes three stories, so to trim some down. And yeah, workshop through the course of the year, and then we hit about fall, about end of summer, and started organizing everyone into since I didn't have the funds or to just up and publish the thing myself, but also I think it's important for other writers to understand the publishing process and all things that go into a lot of the finish of a book. So I'm mostly developmental editor, which means I'm not your grammar, spelling, and punctuation person. Never will be. That is not my strong suit. Story is where I thrive. So once I had been through those, and there were still some stories that needed a little bit of little tiny tune up, those last editor touches of, like, this is a good line, but if you put it here, then it's magic, that sort of thing. And then we had a couple people in the group, Rick Cook and Jonah Saul, who are impressively adept and mildly militant, thank goodness, about the spelling, grammar, and all those things. So we had them going through, and we had a sign up sheet for everyone, and so they are reviewing each other's stories and looking, leaving notes. And so there's some stuff that myself as an editor, that can speed up the process, sometimes, not always. And then once we have each story has gone through, it almost became an assembly line. They've gone through me, they've gone through whatever technical edits or copy editing, and it's ready. Then I would send it on to whoever is the proofreading volunteers. And we probably had a good, I don't know, 10, 15 eyeballs proofreading stories on it. Wow. And I still told them, I'm like, look, I've had 20 people go over a book and still not have the right rein in the right place.
Right. There.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Those are our nightmares. I'm like, so it's not, no book is ever 100% perfect. You just stop working on it. We're going to get it as close as we possibly can. I have super high standards that way. And there's some things I left because they were more fitting. No, they're not perfectly grammatically correct, but they fit the voice of the author / character in that story. Because I don't think that those things should get in the way of that expression, as long as it doesn't detract from the story. So meantime, we had teams, usually like 2 or 3 members of the group, who are working on cover art, which I helped design, and and then getting the files from the cover art to make into some of those posts that you saw with quotes. Had everybody trying to, I mean, this also is practice for marketing, from when they're going through stories and when they're reviewing, like, look for the best 1 to 3 lines from the story that just are really punchy, that just really grab you. Save them to this Excel or Google Sheets file, and then those who are doing the, I don't know, info memes or whatever you want to call them, for getting ready to post on social media, could then take that data with the story name and all that, and generate a whole bunch of those. So we have hundreds of those, honestly, because you know, in Twitter format, in Instagram format, in Facebook format, because they're all different sizes. And so we broke it all down, all the pieces, and I was project leader, and at the same time also raising funds from the group, because this is the goal, being that each book makes enough money to pay for the next to get published, so that everyone can continue to have, they can feel like they're accomplishing something every year or every couple of years, even if their main project hasn't come out yet, or they haven't got that agent, or they haven't got that deal, whatever it is. They can still look to the anthologies that we do as a group and feel a sense of accomplishment, as like they have momentum and they're working towards their goals. They're moving towards them. So
I think it's amazing that you crowdsourced this entire book from your boutique group. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm happy that there was a project leader, because I can see the chaos that would ensue if there wasn't.
Oh my gosh. There's parts of it I will not be crowdsourcing again. That got wild.
Right, but those are the lessons of doing this, right? Like as you go through, and when you get to 5, you'll make new mistakes, but you pass some of the old ones on.
So what are 1 or 2 of those, like, oh yeah, that's never going to happen in this next, you know, when you do an anthology, don't do this.
And I'm writing this down because I'm working on one with a buddy. So watch me. I'm going into note mode. Jim, here's what we're not doing.
Right. It's easy to forget that every editor has their own style. And so by opening up the editing process to others, that was chaos. And also because people don't always have the greatest comfort level with their fellow authors, especially have been critiquing them for, you know, years, being their editor on their stuff, because they're not necessarily an editor that they would pick for it. And so I ended up having to use a lot of their editing notes referentially. I wasn't always, they weren't like, oh, they put this on here, I'll keep it, because I'm going for the full cohesion of the whole book.
Right.
So having them in the editing process muddied the water a lot, and that's where it got really crazy, especially as far as coordinating back and forth. And so there's also then approval from the other authors, and they're like, but I don't like that so and so thing. I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's all my edits, I promise, it's mine. It's cool.
So next time you would be the only editor?
The only editor that way. I still need copy editors for the grammar, spelling, those sorts of things. And that's always essential. And I would come out that part, but I'm not going to bring other people into the actual editing section of it. That is.
So I just wanted to clarify that. I didn't hear that part. So you said you would do the developmental edits, and then you would farm out, you would hire someone else to come in and do the line edits? I
do developmental. We have probably different definition of this. I mean, down to line edits on it. But as far as the final copy editing, the final check, the grammar, the spelling, punctuation, all of that, it depends. It's hard because there are people in the group I'm like, I can mostly use them, and I'll probably lean towards that. But at the same time, if we ever get to a place where the anthologies are bringing in enough money, I will happily hire that part out. Just
picking one person to do the copy edits. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me.
Because I would have 2 or more going over it, and then you'd get into little comment wars on the side of the of the story, and those then you're mediating them, and you don't have the time and energy to do that also.
Right.
So most everything else about it went as smoothly as it could. We also did that in 12 months,
Wow.
or technically
That's
11 and a
terrific.
half months, which was in 2021, was extreme and I thought was going to kill me. So now we're doing every 2 years at most, because it's still volunteer based and
Mhm.
I need to also have a life. But
Well,
yeah,
that's
we'll
really
keep
exciting.
doing it. Thank you. We're really proud.
Yeah, I think it's so exciting. I think it's just so cool to think that people could organize around that and it could work. And I mean, if you look at the reviews are fantastic. So clearly, like, that process you invented as you went really, it really worked.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm very pleased. I'm thrilled to be doing it again. It is an absolute delight. I wish it was a big moneymaker because it would be fun to just keep doing it. Like that be the main thing I'm doing. And maybe someday it will get to that point. It's really inspiring when you have the reviews like that we got from Kirkus for it. And we have been, they contacted us and we were featured in the January issue of the Kirkus Review magazine of this year.
Nice.
That's so cool.
They reached out to us again, and they have a indie publishing edition of the magazine that comes out every April, and asked us, and they review tens of thousands of books a year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They asked us if we'd like to be in the April indie author issue as well.
Well, cool.
So
that might
That's so
get
cool.
some more eyeballs on it too. That's exciting.
Absolutely. And that's getting there. That's mostly gets it more in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
The value of getting in the indie author edition is that's what apparently a lot of bookstores and libraries pick up and do their small press indie author shopping from for the year for books. And so we're hopeful of that. At the same time, the Kirkus Review makes me want to enter it in whatever other contests and awards things are out there, because I'm like, we're not crazy. This thing has a lot of heart, and
That's
people
awesome.
Right.
Well, congratulations on your first
Congratulations.
themed anthology that seems to have all this critical acclaim. And then do you want to, as we close, do you want to tell people like what you do as your day job, and your editing and how people can contact you if they're interested in, if you're taking new clients?
Oh,
I guess I should have asked that first before I threw you under the bus.
No worries. I'm fully booked up right now. The best way is to be a part of the read and critique group.
Okay.
And to stay in touch that way. And it's just on Facebook. I'm actually working on getting on Substack as well, because Facebook's been too finicky for too many creators these days.
So how would you go about if someone wanted to be part of this group?
Right. That the Facebook groups, I literally called the group Reading Critique Group for Writers. I'm like, what is the most blatantly obvious? There's no
Right.
At the same time, it's also if you were to look up 3Bird View on Facebook, I believe it's connected to that as well. It should be anyways. And we post weekly. Would it help if I put it in chat, the group thing?
Yeah, and then we'll just put the link in the show notes for folks if they want to check out that, or 3Bird View, which is your business name, right?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I'll pull that up.
Very cool. Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was
Thank
excellent.
you for having me.
I can't wait to read this anthology now.
I can't wait to hear. Everybody has a different reaction to it. I had family pick it up and like, what was the story that you're like, oh my God, that one that like shocked you? Oh, the other thing we did, every story that needs it has a content warning.
Okay.
Because we're very, it's called consent forward. And so we want people to not, because there can be some really strong topics in these. So if there's drug use, if there's extreme language or stuff like that, it'll say at the beginning of the story that, heads up for this, so that you can choose if you want to go into that depth. Some of them are not all They're not all ages stories. How about
Okay.
that?
Love it.
All right.
Alright.
So great. Now I'm inspired to go continue my process of developing an anthology, and I can't wait to have you on in a year when the next one comes out. We'll talk about what went right for that one, like, and what you do different.
See if I have a twitch in one of my eyes yet.
Well, that's something Val and I are always trying to, we try to be transparent about, here's the things we've done that works, and here are some of the things that we're doing that we'd love to do differently. And so I think being candid, I think there's a lot to learn from that. And there's a lot to learn about the process for people who, I think there's a lot of mystery around what goes on with anthology. So
Yeah, it was 3 times more time consuming than I expected it to be.
Okay.
So just a heads up on that one. And I
All
can't
right.
tell you if that's because it was a giant group project or if that's just anthologies.
we'll
So
compare notes.
yeah, you'll have to let me know on the individual ones.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us today, Jenny. Have a wonderful
Thank
week.
you for having me.
And thank you, listeners, for joining us. And we hope you have a wonderful week. And we'll see you on the next episode. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
See ya.